I'm Tracy Thomas. Welcome. As I was looking out across the room, I was searching for my safety nets, the people that know more about this than I do, looking for my troublemakers who are going to ask all the questions. And so now that you don't know if you're a hero or a troublemaker, I can start pointing at people. And they're some in the back, some in the front. I am glad Mr. Greg Reese is here. If y'all haven't seen Greg, he came in today. He's over here on the right. Walking around the room are a lot of the revenue folks. We couldn't do this without them, and a lot of those revenuers are also online support people. So I see Nathan walking around. Ben's teaching next door. He'll be here in the next session. Faye is somewhere out there cracking the whip, I'm sure. But those are the online support people, and I'm thankful for them to be here too. Again, I'm Tracy Thomas. If you don't know me, I retired from the Department of Revenue in 2019. Hard to believe that was 6 years ago. So a lot of you I know, a lot of you I don't know. But I now contract with Gap Group, WinGap, and I'm here not to teach you House Bill 581. The revenue folks have already done that yesterday. But we can take questions on that if there's some confusion, and we can try to answer. We've got some of the people that were there when they were making the sausage, and a lot of people have done a lot of testing in WinGap, and we've fixed a lot of things, but we've also found there's some more things to fix. We're really close, but we'll get into all that. This is my email address. That's also my cell phone number. If you're a texter like the young kids are, you can always feel free to text me. As we're going through this, I'm fine with questions. I think questions in an interactive crowd helps me take a breath, helps you guys stay awake, and instead of me just doing the Ferris Bueller and just going on and on and on. So if you got questions, ask one of the revenue folks with microphones, or you can text it to me or text it to somebody else you know that's not ashamed to say something, and let's get the questions out of the way. All right? This slide presentation can be downloaded from that link if you want to snap a photo of that. We are also recording this session, so in case you throw something at me, we'll have evidence of that. But I did want to let you know that we're recording it. We'll make the video available later, so if you've got folks at home that couldn't come that would still like to see the presentation, it'll be on the WinGap website or a link or something, okay? I don't think we're taking a break in this session. It's an hour and a half. If you're like me, sometimes you've had more coffee than you can hold. You won't bother me a bit. I will not be insulted if you get up and go drop off a cup and pick up a new one. So let's be relaxed. We're going to talk about the home. I thought about building this, and some folks have been mired up in this for a year and a half and know it very well, and some maybe haven't even seen it until this week. So I kind of built the presentation from the ground up. So some of this is going to be, if you've been in it, it's going to seem super elementary in some places, so just bear with me on that. We're going to talk about the homestead code that's going to be used. We're going to talk about, let me back up. When I was asked to do this presentation, it was under the general idea of how's WinGap going to help you implement House Bill 581 and then the 92 House bill that demonized everything we thought we already knew right at the last minute. And so that's what I'm here to how do you set up your schedules, and how are we going to just do the general stuff to get WinGap ready to implement this legislation. So we're going to talk about the homestead code, how you configure a tax type. A tax type is county, school, city, fire, everything that makes up a millage rate in a given tax district. Each of those individual lines is a tax type. What does flag improvements versus all improvements mean? How do we set and reset our statewide base, our statewide current values, tracking growth events, editing statewide base and statewide current consolidation sheets, the assessment notices, all three of them, and then digest exports, which gets us to when you're ready to hand it off to the tax commissioner, and then the real fun begins. All right, so the homestead code that we're using, Greg and I first thought about, well, it's going to be a statewide floating homestead. So we're going to do SFW. We thought, well, that is simple. Everybody will remember that. Until those law-abiding revenuers said only state codes can start with an S. So we had a little dyslexia, and we just flipped it around, so it's floating statewide, FSW. It's the same code in every county that's a wind gap county. So we set those codes up for you, which we'll get to in a minute. But that's our acronym. It's a floating statewide. It's effective for 2025. Had some counties thought that because the CPI was 1.0, that it didn't go into effect until next year. And so they were caught off guard a little bit. So it's effective this year. So that's where we're at. The tax type configuration screen, you get to that screen in WinGap, you go to the menu under Tools, you go to Schedules and Tables, and then you select the tax calculation tables. That's going to bring up this screen where you see a bunch of buttons, but the one we want to focus on is tax types. When you open up the tax type screen, you see them all listed there. And this looks like Greene County data. So you've got the state tax type and county and Greensboro and school and so on and so forth. This is where we're going to do the most important configuration of these tax types. The first thing we need to do is you know who's opted in or opted out, or I hope you know. Is Faye in here yet? She is not in here yet. Is there another revenuer in here that knows about the Secretary of State list of certified opt-ins and opt-outs? No. Okay, well, maybe you know in your county who's in and who's out. I don't know, and I won't know until you tell me. But if everybody opts out, you don't have to do anything. So if you've got people that have opted in, you need to go check this box. This says statewide homestead eligible. So all of this reset. Pink, you need something? You were flagging somebody down. Okay. And again, it's hard for me to see y'all with these spotlights, so if y'all have a question and I can't see it, just yell at me or something. So if they opt in, you need to go check this box. The other thing House Bill 581 did for us is the assessment notice is only going to show M&O levies. Now, to me, that's not ideal because it's going to be confusing for your citizens who are used to seeing county, school, Greensboro, fire. Now they're just going to see the M&O versions of those. Now, I also don't know which one of your levies are M&Os. And if my revenue friends will plug their ears, I really don't care which ones you flag or don't flag. But now you can unplug your ears, Nathan. You should flag only the M&O levies, is what the law says. And so this is where you designate which ones are M&O, okay? So if you, for example, had somebody say, my fire fees aren't showing up on my assessment notice, that's not an M&O levy. I'm not making the rules, we're just living with them, okay? I know you're going to get a lot of questions where those are. That's just part of the fun. So we need to flag the M&O levy box, if it's an M&O levy. If that tax type entity provides you with an estimated rollback rate, you have to come here and key it in, okay? Now, just in case I don't forget it later, if they have opted in, I had this question yesterday, if they opted in to the statewide floating homestead, but they don't provide you an estimated rollback rate, that's going to impact which assessment notice variant you get. Both of those have to exist. They have to have opted in and give you a rollback rate to get the version that shows the rollback rate. If they don't give you the rate, they're going to get the old version where it shows the estimated taxes, okay? But this is where you key in the rollback rate that they give you. Another question that I've been getting about this rollback rate. If we've been in this business for a while, you know that a lot of county and school levies have a different rate for incorporated and unincorporated due to sales tax rollbacks, insurance premium rollbacks, and that kind of junk. Well, the tax bill is going to show you probably both, gross and net. Your assessment notice is always shown the net tax rate. Well, now this estimated rollback rate is the gross rate. So not only are they not going to see all the levies, if they provide you an estimated rollback rate, they've probably never seen that gross millage rate or paid attention to it because the math is on the net. So we're showing them a number that means almost nothing to them. But it's the gross rate, okay? A lot of people, then the quick reason I get the question is, do I put in, where do I key in the incorporated after the rollbacks? Now, you don't. It's all on the gross, okay? All right, after tax types, we go to tax type exemption. We need to configure that as well. Now, when you started doing these recent WinGap updates, and I know they have been many, coming in sometimes daily. For some of you, you get several a day if you've been helping me test. So, but when we first started this, if there were no FSW codes in your schedule, it would create one for every tax type. It did that for you. Now, if you'd already gone in and were very proactive and already put in an FSW, it wasn't going to do anything, because as soon as it detects one, it assumes they're all there. Okay, so that's why I wanted to talk about this. In case you were one of those proactives and you run your reports and you're not seeing anything, it could be because of what we're going to talk about. It is because every county has different tax types. The only one that every county has in common is state. So you must have an FSW code in the schedule for the state tax type. That's the one that all the routines are looking for, because that's the only one we know is going to be there. Okay, so if you went in and keyed in county, school, city, fire FSWs, and there's not a state, when you run consolidations, you're not going to get anything, because it can't match to the tax type, and it needs that state to be in there. So that's what I just said. All right, and I just said that for the people reading at home. All right, the base value, and this is where the fun starts. The base value is to be the 2024 value. Now that sounds simple, right? But my friend Sarah just walked up here and told me, what if 2024 was a 299C value? What if it's an SB 346 value? Well, so what? That's their 2024 value. We just get to eat it. They just get lucky. There's no other way around it. So it's just whatever it was for 2024. Legally, 299C is their fair market value for last year. SB 346 is their fair market value, okay? So then, of course, next year we roll forward to 26, new applications, their 2025 value will be their base, and it just rolls forward like that. There's a maximum of 5 acres. We decided early on, before House Bill 92 came out, that we were going to exclude from the base anything that was in a covenant. It just seemed insane to me for somebody to be receiving conservation use on land and then to also give them homestead exemption on top of it. So we decided we're not going to do it. And if they wanted to come arrest me and Greg and Department of Revenue handcuffs, they could do that. But then they passed House Bill 92, and it made everything we were doing perfect. So we're excluding conservation use and flip of properties automatically. There's nothing you can do to put them in that base. Okay, you can flag it till your finger falls off. It's not going to put in conservation use. The other thing that this statute says differently than conservation use is primary residence. Question, where?
What if it's like a family farm and there's 3 houses on that piece of property, is it 5 acres per?
I'll get to that. But to answer your question, the question was, what if you have a covenant that's got 3 houses on it? It's a family farm. And you've got 2 acres excluded for all 3 houses, so you've got a total of 6 acres excluded. What's going to be in the base? Well, that's where this primary residence comes in. For that parcel, for that homestead, there's only 1 primary residence, right? And the excluding land for 1 house is 2 acres. So we're going to include 2 acres of the 6 in the base. Okay? You led me right where I was just dying to go. I appreciate that. But we didn't discuss it later because we just discussed it now. But that's where I was headed with that. You know, in the conservation use statute, it doesn't use the word primary. It just says exclude the residence. But when the House Bill 581 said primary, that's when we narrowed it down to 1. Faye, I was going to ask you something, but I forgot what it was. Oh, yes. Do we have I've heard varying stories. I know you sent me a preliminary list. Is there a absolute list of who's opted in and opted out?
We have not received an absolute list of who opted in and who opted out from the Secretary of State. We haven't. If you have one, please share it.
The Secretary of State will produce a list.
Mm-hmm.
They've already given me mine from where our school system opted out. They do have a master list.
They do have a master list. Did they share the master list with you or just according to your county?
No. I can check with Dante.
Mm-hmm.
Been in contact with them because they were working hand in hand.
And we have a list, but we're weary of getting a list with DOR for the implications whenever it comes to the digest submission side of things. There's some people that are now thinking that maybe we should be checking the advertising. The law is very clear that the Secretary of State is the person that will be checking that advertising and making sure that those people properly opted out. So we're just trying to keep out of that side, because we don't want a county to think that they did everything properly, and then we get here to digest submission time and we have having to check the ads, and we realize that the ad wasn't 30 square inches. Maybe they only did it 15 inches. Maybe they didn't hold 3 meetings. Maybe they only held 2 meetings. But there is, you can definitely request the list from the Secretary of State. What I've had, I found undercover. I did some things to get the list, but it wasn't directly from the Secretary of State.
Is this
So
like,
it's unofficial. My
is this
listing.
like mafia stuff to get it?
More or less. We'll call it mafia stuff.
And I want to tell you, Faye's intuition is perfect because the blind spot of the camera is to my left. She didn't even know that. So here's what somebody came to me and said that they had an entity or tax type, whatever term you want to use, who thinks they opted out. If they think they opted out, they're going to tell Janice, I opted out. Janice may or may not, I mean, she's not the authority to say yes or no. What do they do?
I know of when that.
Do they call you or Secretary of State?
If I was y'all, I would definitely call the county and find out who in your districts opted out, because there was one, I know specifically one Board of Education that believed they had opted out, and come to find out whatever the process was, somewhere in that process they failed. That person that was working there that was doing all that no longer has a job.
Do they get
because
some sort of
they have
certificate
kept
back
them
or note or receipt or
opting
anything?
We required the Secretary of State to provide confirmation that they have met all the requirements. They already have a form letter, they're going through the process, they have, the master list has who's filed when, because the code section says that they, even though you went through your hearings and did all that, it had to be filed by a certain date. And so that letter from the Secretary of State, I had it go before our board as confirmation, here's who's in, here's who's out.
Yeah, well, and so I'm certainly will not recommend that you start waterboarding these people to find out if they've opted in or opted out. But I know you also know your people. We don't want to make it so difficult for them that it becomes more frustrating than it already is. But I know you may need some. Maybe they're all getting some sort of certification or an email or you're in something. So you guys can, if you need reassurance, you can get it. We know that elected and government officials never, ever distort the truth or lie. Right?
And they do everything right.
Always do it right.
Always.
Question way in the back.
So our school board told us that they had opted out, and they ran all the advertisements, they did all the paperwork, and then the paperwork sat on somebody's desk for a week. And the deadline was on a Saturday, so they mailed the paperwork on Monday. And the Secretary of State's office rejected it. So they do have a master list, and on that master list it says when each jurisdiction's paperwork came in, whether it was accepted or not, and what their opt-in or opt-out status is. They also have, the Secretary of State's office also has a packet for every jurisdiction. And if you ask, they'll send you a copy of that packet. And the packet has all of the information that was sent in, including all the advertisements, has any communication that was sent back and forth with the jurisdiction, and what their final status was. You asked earlier, did they get a certificate? No, but they do get a letter that states whether they opted in or opted out based on their filing qualifications. So yes, this jurisdiction was telling us they were opted out. In fact, the state said no, they had opted in by default. So I highly recommend everybody check with the Secretary of State's office, because they are not reaching out to us. We have to reach out to them. And our jurisdictions honestly don't know whether they're in or out. They got this letter supposedly from the Secretary of State's office telling them whether they were in or out, but they were not forthcoming with us about it because they were trying to cover up the fact that they had screwed up and mailed late. So I recommend y'all check with the Secretary of State's office and ask for that master listing, because it has been a huge amount of communication issues for us in trying to get the truth out of the situation.
Thank you, Lauren. That was very helpful. I'm not even going to ask my next question.
What's that?
Yeah, I'm going to ask it anyway. Say Lauren had not done due diligence and she had taken their word for it. And she sends her notices and they send their tax bills and they submit their digest. Well, they do the bills after the digest, of course. Is that going to get rejected? Are you guys going to check it that close? I mean, what's the consequence of somebody missing something like that?
That's a good question.
We can leave it right there if you want to.
I know, but the thing that we have to think of is if they had provided that taxpayer with that exemption for that year, in law, what's it always tell us, to whatever is the benefit of the taxpayer. So in my mind, it would almost be like, okay, y'all screwed up this year, maybe next year it wouldn't be screwed up. But honestly, an issue like that would probably go before legal.
Okay,
Before
good
it
enough.
ever, we would not on our level make that decision, because the first question they're gonna ask is, how did it affect them? And it's not even how did it affect that county or that entity, they're asking how did it affect that taxpayer?
The property owner.
And in their eyes, I'm thinking, hey, they screwed up, the county, whoever screwed up, taxpayers got it this year, that's good.
Good enough. Okay, moving on to base value. When you run the reset script, and we'll talk more about the details of that. I don't know how to make this stop doing that stuff. Sorry about that. I'll figure that out for the next session. When you run the reset script, we capture a whole lot of data. And we're doing that for parcels with homestead and without homestead. In case through the appeal process or sometime later in the game, they apply for homestead and we're not scrambling to go capture this information. We've already got it recorded for you. So that information includes, and I'll show you how you can see this on the screen, it captures the number of acres included in the homestead. The 2 acres for the conservation use that had 6 excluded, or the 5 acres if it's not in the covenant. You'll see the land value that's been calculated for how much it's kicking in or contributing to that base value. You'll see the improvement value. This is non-accessory improvement value that's kicked into the homestead. You'll see any accessory values that have been accumulated. If you did the flag option or the all option, you'll see that value there. And then you'll see an HS base column, which is your starting point original base for 2024. There's a real growth column that where WinGap has been for months tracking and detecting edits that you make to try to keep track of real growth events. So where there's a column where you can see the sum total of that. There's a CPI column. We know this year that CPI is 1, but in the years ahead, we'll be tracking year by year what the CPI is, so you'll have a history and a log of all this stuff. So when Sarah hits the lottery and she leaves, the person that comes back in 3 years later, they can see the history and say, okay, how did I get to this number? And you've got some history there. CPI value is just going to be the money equivalent of whatever that index generates. So this year it's going to be 0. Next year it'll be whatever the number is. And then after you take the HS base column, which is the original 2024 number, add real growth, add CPI value, you get the HS base final value. So on all these parcels, you can see this anytime you want to see it. And I'll show you how to get to it, but that's what the reset script is generating. All right, so if we got parcel A that's 2024 was 4.5 acres, $70,000. The residential improvement is $300,000. You just add those up. Very simple. And hopefully, that's what most of our properties are. You know, they're not, most of the homesteads aren't going to be super big tracts and all that jazz. I know you got some, but this is going to be the majority of them. A different example, it's 12 acres. We know we only include 5, so we're going to divide the total land value, $131,000, by 12 to get a per acre rate, times 5 gives us $54,000 as the land contribution into the homestead. Then you add in the improvement, and you have your base value. Pretty simple stuff when we do it one by one. right? And that's what's important is that that all of you understand where that base number comes from, so that when we run a menu item and it updates 9,000 of them, you can look at a number and check it and say, yeah, that's right, or man, there's something wrong here. You know, and that's what a lot of us have been doing, and there are a lot of you in this room that have been instrumental in that. You know, it's very difficult for Greg and I and the online support team to look at 150 counties and know what's right. It's just hard for us to stay at the high level and get into the details. So you guys that have been helping and testing, you don't know how much that's meant to me and Greg and the rest of the team. So some more examples. We're going to chase a little rabbit down a rabbit hole here in a minute. We got 14 and a half acres. We got $170,000. You've got residential improvement 1, residential improvement 2. And so we need 5 acres of land. We know that. So we're going to total land value divided by our total acres times 5 for a 5-acre cat gives us 58,000 and some change. So now we have to know which residence to include. We need to know what is the primary residence, don't we? So we know that the homestead base value, where does that 70 coming from? I think that's a typo. Yep, that should have been the land value, the 58.6. So let's go look at this primary residence business. So originally in 581, it said the entire parcel. So we had the option to include all improvements, but some counties already have local exemptions. How many people in here don't have local exemptions in your county? Just a show of hands. So some of you have not ever dealt with flagging improvements as in the exemption or out of the exemption. So that's kind of a new concept for some people. But anyway, before House Bill 92 came in, we had this checkbox where counties that wanted to do the entire parcel, you just check this box and all improvements are there. So in the example we just left, both houses would be in the homestead because it said the entire parcel. Well, then House Bill 92 came out, gave us a little more clarification on that, but counties that already had a local exemption, I'm pointing at my friends from Effingham, who they decided early on that they were only going to use the flagged improvements, the same thing they were using for their existing locals. And what that means is they would go pick between House 1 and House 2, which one is the primary residence. They'd go put a check mark on it, and that would throw it into their local exemption. So that's the concept of when we have multiple improvements, somebody's got to determine which one's the main house. Which one are they living in? The computer doesn't know that. There's nothing in your data collection that says this one's occupied, this one's not. They may both be occupied, but not the one getting the homestead. So there's a lot of human interaction here required. So counties still have the option to include all improvements. If you want to do that, you just check this box in preferences, and it'll include both houses and all accessories that are there, unless it's in conservation use. And you don't have to flag anything, okay? But if you don't check all, then you're going to have to do some flagging. But some people say, if I check all, is it still going to get all improvements? Well, all means all right? So if you don't want all of them, don't check all. That seemed pretty clear to me, but I get some questions on it sometimes. So now, in some counties, this is my South Georgia mind doing this to me. I know that in my area of the woods, we've got multiple 10,000 acre tracts and down from there. When you get up to North Georgia, you may not have a tract over 100 acres, right? I don't know, but it's different, is what I'm saying geographically, from one end of the state to the other. You know your data. You know typically your people getting homestead is it one house and then a pool and 2 acres? And so checking all may save you a lot of data entry and a lot of time and not much harm. Whereas if you're in a different area, you may have a lot of tracts that receive homestead that have chicken houses and hay barns and 3 houses for farm tenants, and checking all improvements would be a big deal. But you know your data better than I do. I just wanted to give you a tool that makes it easy. If you want to say, you know what, I'll take the random utility building that falls in, I'm checking all. It's easy, it's clean. The checkbox is there. Sarah?
What we found was if there's a state homestead box already checked on the improvement, that was just a way for our folks to know for sure that, yep, that already is the improvement.
Sarah's saying that if you've been in this business very long, You know, there used to be a state homestead that would exempted you for a house plus 10 acres for state tax. Well, the state levy's gone away now. But some of those, she was saying that if that state checkbox was checked, that was their indication that's the primary residence, which is a good indication. I mean, that's fine. The problem or the risk that I see with that is because the state levy's been gone so long, it doesn't mean anything to you locally. I know the revenue folks like it for consolidation purposes, but it really doesn't mean anything to you or your people or your tax bills. I just don't know how much the data entry people have been paying attention to that since it means nothing anymore. That would be on my only reservation with that. But it's a great indication if it's there. Good idea. All righty. So as I said, know your data. You'll know the impact or potential impact of including all. Now, if you don't want to include all, then we're going to not check that box, and now things get even more fun. I'll come back to this configuration screen later. All right. That's the only flag I could find. I guess that's a pirate flag. Maybe that's appropriate, maybe it's not. Some other considerations on all versus flag will include large tracts where there's got multiple houses that we talked about with Doug's example with the conservation use. Which one of those 3 houses is the primary residence? It could be farm buildings and all that other kind of stuff too. Have you traditionally included in the homestead pools and driveways and fencing and all that stuff is an accessory to the computer. Now your people look at it and say, oh yeah, that's easy. That one's in, that one's out. But the computer doesn't know that. So either your humans have got to go add all these flags, or you've got to get in touch with, Greg and I have done several of these, and the online support team probably has 2, and I just don't know. They have given us, all right, I want all of these accessories, whichever list is shorter. I want to include pools and driveways and fencing, but I don't want to include barns and tobacco barns and chicken houses or whatever else. So if you don't have any flags, because you don't have any local exemptions, and you're not including all improvements, somebody's got to get some flags on those buildings that you want in. So what many counties have done, one example is they wanted to flag the house with the most square footage. They said, that's primary. Is that always going to be perfect? No, but we're not looking for perfection. We're looking for pretty good. Or some would say the value that's the highest value. That's primary. But if you don't want to go touch every improvement screen, which nobody in here does because it's May the whatever it is, 19th or 20th, we're going to need some general rules to say biggest house or most valuable house or whatever you want to use, highest graded house, it can be anything. That's primary, and then these accessories are in or these accessories are out, or no accessories are in. Just give us some rules, we'll help you set the flags. But if you don't check all and you don't flag anything, you're not going to get anything. Does that make sense? Except for land.
I have a question, Trey.
Yes, ma'am.
So if, let's say you pull a script to run to see every parcel you have that multiple homes are on,
Mm-hmm.
and you've set all flags or just those that are flagged, if you unflag one of those, will that automatically, like, once you reappraise or reset flags, will that take that one out and just leave the one that you have flagged? How will it affect that?
I'm going to repeat what I think the question is so the camera can get it. If you just flag everything, every house, and so Doug's example, all 3 houses get flagged, and then go back and unflag, make sure I do my fingers right, 2 of them, and then run your calculations. Will it take those 2 houses out? Yes. So that's perfectly fine too. Flag them all, and then we can go unflag the ones that have 2 or 3. But get your flags there if you're not checking all improvements. That's my point. If you need help getting your flags there, you got my email. You know how to get in touch with all of the support team. I keep pointing to Greg because he's just the best at everything, and I apologize, Greg. That's why he's got so much to do. All right, so this is what the flag section of the improvement screen looks like. It's just a simple checkbox. There you see the state homestead box that Sarah was talking about. If you have local exemptions, you've probably got a local checkbox flagged also. And then there's a new flag for the statewide floating homestead. I can't remember if I've got a slide for this, but so I'll say it now. when you run the reset script that I told you that collects all those columns of data, if there's a local flag already, WinGap copies it down to the float flag. So if it's already flagged as local, it's going to automatically flag it as FSW, float, whatever, statewide float, okay, to save you data entry. Seemed logical to me that if it's good enough for your local exemption, it's good enough for this statewide one. I thought that was a safe bet until it wasn't. There's a county that includes accessories in their local exemption, but decided they didn't want to include accessories in the statewide floating exemption. Don't know why. Again, 6 years gone from revenue. Greg told me eventually I'll get it out of my blood. It's out of my blood. I don't care what you do. I'll just help you do it. I'm just here to help. You didn't hear that, Faye. I don't care as well. All right, so if you're a manual person, you just go check that box, and that's all it is to flag it. It's just that you've got 10,000 of them. That's the problem. Yes?
Will the state SW float homestead box ever show check?
Yeah, if they go check it, or if I had run the reset script for flagged, it would have copied that local flag down to the state flag. Yes. Now let me go on to say, originally, if you ran the reset script for all improvements, we didn't copy the flag, which you don't need to because you checked it all improvements. All means all, right? But we got so many calls. I ran the all flag script or all improvements script, and I go to houses and the doggone checkbox isn't checked. So, well, all means all. You don't need to check it. But so to stop the questions, when they run the all script, we flag the stupid box. So now when they look at it, it's flagged. That gives them some reassurance that it's been flagged. So no matter which script you run, if you do all, flagged. If it's flagged, if it's got a local, it'll copy it. So it's also flagged. I'm not trying to talk fast, but we got a lot of slides, and I want time for questions too. And I know y'all are ready for biscuits whenever they drop them out. We getting biscuits today? Well, do we get fresh coffee? Okay. Coffee and water. Don't overdo it, people. All right, so as we talked about, checking the box will designate it as included in the FSW exemption process. It's just what I just said. If you already have a local box, it'll copy it down to the statewide float. All right, so we're done with our rabbit hunt of our example of what was flagged versus unflagged. Remember, we left because we had two houses. So we come back to that. Parcel C, let's see if my typo's still there. It is. I don't know what that 70,000 at the bottom means. The point is, if there's multiple improvements, you got to pick which one's included if you're not doing all. That was the point of the exercise in the rabbit hunt. All right, what we got next? What if the home didn't exist last year? It's a brand new house. Now, we're not going to add zero. That wouldn't be that doesn't make any sense to give them complete exemption on that house. So WinGap is going to grab the 2025 value for those new houses and throw it in, okay? Does the CPI impact 2025 applicants different than 2026 and future applicants? I think at one time there was some confusion that if they signed up the first year, they never got the CPI added on later. That's not the case. Okay, CPI hits as soon as there's an index to all of them the same. Yes? However. Yes, that's a very good point, Steve. For new applicants next year, let's assume that the CPI is 1.03, 3%. Their first year will be the 2025 as their base, plus the CPI adjustment, plus any real growth. Faye, you got something to say? You took an aggressive first step there.
So that's something that was brought up yesterday whenever we were talking about whether or not we added something that was real growth after the fact. And whenever I went back and looked at the law and looked at it again, because almost with the way that it's written, you have to get to the homestead, the floating homestead section, start at the bottom and kind of work your way up. But in there it does tell us the only thing we can apply that CPI growth factor to is whatever that previous year's base value was. So in the instance that we added something that was $500,000, only that base value is gonna receive that CPI. The $500,000 that would be added in 2026 will not have that CPI calculation added to it. Then moving forward, all of it's gonna get the CPI, but just for that first year when you have that new improvement, that's whenever you have that, CPI not apply, just to it, just to that new addition or whatever subsequently done or substantially done to the property.
Y'all sufficiently confused? I'll rephrase. I know exactly what she's talking about. Let me just back up to the slide. We'll try that. Maybe that'll help. Where's my columns at? Looking for the one that's got that. Wow. Here we go. We talked about how when we run the script, we go get the 2024 value. 2024 land is HS land. 2024 improvement is HS improvement. 2024 accessories is HS accessory improvements. Those first 2, 3, and 4 columns there. That creates HS base. And then to HS base, you add real growth and you add CPI and you get HS final. Okay? What Faye is saying that whatever's in HS base is the only thing that gets the CPI. The real growth is just the real growth. You add the sunroom for $25,000, it's just $25,000. It's not 25 plus CPI. Is the driver in this the homestead application date? If it's got a homestead code, it's getting it. Everybody's not even keying in homestead dates. Am I missing the question? Yes.
But how does it know to change if you have concurrent homesteads? Like if you got a sale or a new owner?
The question is, how does it, if it's, I think this is the question. It's receiving homestead today, but then it sells. How do we know to do a reset the base? Because is that what you're asking me? When you do a transfer, there's an option in preferences to reset the base.
So the only time the base is gonna reset is when it's
I think, yes, sell or transfer, isn't that when the base resets?
Then, or if they request to have the homestead exemption removed, and then they come back in and reapply.
Faye said, or they can come in and request to have their homestead removed. Then they can reapply. While technically true, I don't think there'll be 10 people in the state that are going to come in and say, take my homestead away. But it could. It's possible. Anything's possible. Jennifer, I knew this was coming. I'm just teasing.
Okay, so we roll over to 26. So we have everything set. Our bases are good. We're in 26 right now. We know that the CPI is going to be added in 26. So if what Faye is saying, the only thing that's going to get that CPI is going to be whatever that value rolls over. So let's say said house puts in a garage. We're going to be putting that garage in September, October. That garage will not get the benefit of that CPI. Is that correct?
If
Okay.
the garage that's added as part of tax year 26
It will
is
not
not
get
going to
that.
be indexed.
Okay, so the index, so it's going to know when we get whatever magical CPI number later on in the year, and we've added all this stuff, it's going to know.
Here's how it's going to know. We're going to end the year with some kind of numbers in this table. And HS final, when you roll over and create 26, is going to jump up there into HS base.
Okay.
And it's never going to change.
Okay, so if we have the growth turned off and we have to manually add it in there, let's say we have
Okay.
to just hypothetically, if we have to manually, and we're manually adding it all in there, at the end of the year, it's gonna know just whatever that number that we rolled over gets that.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
All of this base refresh and recalculation stuff, that's a one-year gig.
Okay, I'm just trying to get it.
So
in
when
my
we roll
mind.
forward, there's not going to be a reset base anymore. It's just going to pull what it was last year into the HS base column. And then through whatever growth detection there is, whether you manually add it, we haven't even got to that screen yet, but that's going to go in the real growth column.
Okay.
So the HS base is never going to change. It's going to be whatever it was when it ended this year. And then we'll know what the CPI is, straight math, that'll give you the CPI value. Okay? All right, now I don't remember what slide I was on. How about that? We're not surprised, are we? Oh, where were we? We did the rabbit hunt. We did this. We were here. What about parcels that split from 24 to 25? Last year it was 20 acres. This year it's 2. If I go back and get 5 acres of land from 2024, that's not right because it's only 2 acres now. I'm putting too much land in the base. And my friend Greg Reese again taught me about how rural land was valued. We know that 20 acres per acre is different than 2, right? It could be rural land versus urban land at that point. It's not even fair to go back, in my opinion, to just go get 2 acres of the 20. So WinGap's going to use the current year value for land. It's going to grab whatever the 2 acres are today, that's what's going in the base. Now, you can change all that. We'll get to the screen where you can override it, but that's the standing rule. We're just going to use what's in 25. Okay? Oh, I went too fast, maybe. Yes, we're going to use the whatever 2025 values are. All right. What about combinations? What the rule does, I hope that's not me jingling. That doesn't sound like my jingle. Combinations. Last year it was 2 acres, this year it's 4. What the routine does, if last year's total acres is different than this year's total acres, it uses this year's land. So splits, combinations, it's going to be whatever 25 is. We talked about parcels and covenants. We've already kind of answered this question when Doug asked it, but we've got a slide for it, so if you want, your people that are downloading can read it. I'm just going to skip past this. It's the primary residence secret. So there's only one, so it's just going to be 2 acres. So let's keep going. So now that we understand how the base is calculated, what the difference is between all and flagged, we can look at these reset. This is the menu item that runs the reset script. If you've gone in and looked for some of your, go on the estimated tax button and you don't see any FSW exemptions amounts, we need to check the things we just checked. Have you opted in? Have you set up the FSW tax type schedule? Are the improvements flagged? Have you run the reset script? If you've done all of those, you should be getting exemption estimates in your estimated taxes. And if not, you need to call me, okay? But that's the basic setup. This is where you run the reset. You know the difference now between all and flagged. When you do the next update, there will be a third one that says flagged, no accessories for that other county that didn't want to include accessories. But again, as we said in the example with Jennifer, once we get past 25, we're not going to need these reset menu items anymore. They're going away because we got what we got at that point, okay? Ma'am.
I wanted to verify that I was correct in my thinking. So if somebody came in 2026 and applied for a homestead exemption, we know that it's telling us to go back to whatever that previous year was. So that 25 value would be your base year value. That 25 value would also be frozen for 26. It does not receive an inflationary factor. You're always gonna have, don't look at me like that.
Or when you say inflation, are you talking CPI?
Yeah.
We just said that the 26s do get CPI, the base.
So if they were in there now, if they're in there for 25, we're saying that our base year is set for 24. What I'm talking about is if we have somebody come in and apply in 2027,
Okay?
their base year value is gonna be based off 26.
Mm-hmm.
That 27 value is gonna be frozen. It will not receive that CPI growth for that 27 value. Following year, that it will receive it. You're always gonna have.
All right, so here's what she's saying. And this is going to be a big, fun debate. She, I,
No, I mean, I agree with what they said. That's how I think it works. Whatever the first year that someone applies for that homestead exemption. Thank you. Yeah, whatever the year someone applies for the homestead exemption, that's when you set the base year value, and that base year value is whatever the year before was. You don't start applying the adjusted base year value in that CPI figure until the following year. So someone applies in 26 for the first time, then their 25 value carries forward to 26, and then they start getting the CPI adjustments in 27.
Everybody's year one, no CPI.
Yeah, everyone year one, no CPI. You disagree, Steve?
Whoop, whoop, whoop. Man, that's going to be fun. Lynn, your dates are going to matter. Thank you, Dante. Danny just had a good point. What if they're just becoming eligible for an age-related exemption? They've been receiving homestead, but this is the first year with their new homestead code because it's a different code because it's age-related. So we've got to know, is it truly a new one, don't we?
So I would think that if they were receiving homestead, not an age-based exemption, then because they're receiving that regular exemption, that gives them the float. Mm-hmm. And then they get that senior exemption when they come of age, but that doesn't stop them from having the float based on their original exemption.
Right, but the question is, so it's year one of the new application, but it's not the year one of them receiving a homestead.
Yeah, I wouldn't think that resets the base.
Will they get CPI in their first year of the age-related exemption, since it's not truly their first year?
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, it makes sense to me too. It's got to be the human's first year of getting a homestead, but to be no CPI for that first year.
Yep.
What if you had in the table that contains your homestead base, instead of Wingate front screen application date, then that's where it stores the base stuff. We got 12 months to worry about this.
So essentially, where is it going to pull that float base year from, like, when they actually apply to have that float? So anybody that is, already in the game, they've already applied, that date is actually out there. But I guess then a different way to track if somebody came in to apply for that additional senior exemption or a S5 even, because you have to have a different homestead application for that.
Let me make it even more complicated.
Let's turn on the homestead module.
Yeah. I have received homestead for 20 years. I buy a new piece of property next year, and I'm eligible for an age-related exemption. It's not my first year receiving homestead, but it is my first homestead on that property. Do I still get the CPI?
That's brand new.
Or is
homestead.
that completely brand new, no
That's
CPI
brand
first
new.
year?
Yeah, completely brand new.
The value of the other does not carry over to that home. It starts you a brand new. Don't look at me like that. No, you can't cheat the system, Tracy. Where's Charlton in
Okay,
here? Don't
okay.
let him cheat the system.
We know the rules now. Did I tell y'all that my daughter is about to graduate from nurse anesthesia school? I didn't tell you that. That is fantastic. I'm very proud of her. But the best part is what we just talked about, because she wants to have not just a graduation party, she wants to have 2 graduation parties. One for family, one for friends, of course. One's never enough. It's not enough that she graduated and she can go start making some jack and paying off loans. That's not happy enough. You telling me. She also wants to take not 1 trip, but 2 trips. She wants to go to Jackson Hole and back to Italy. So, you're a 12-month, Wenda? I'll be in Rome, people. Or Venice, riding in a gondola. I wish. I won't be. Write that down, Faith, so we can figure out how to do that. Because I got it. Yeah, I know. I got it.
Changing the homestead exemption from one type to another, how much and just keeping the base CPI and calculating it.
All right, here's how we're going to do it. Let me ask a question. Anybody in this room that works in the office on the daily? I know there are a lot of assessors in here, so y'all can just ignore this question. You have a question? Okay. But just the people that do the data entry, when you are changing names, doing ownership changes and transfers, are you the type that actually transfers it to a new owner with a new owner key, or do you just open up that screen and delete Tracy Thomas and type in Greg Reese? I hope you create a new owner key so that my number is always my number and not a different person every year. If that's the case, we can look back and say, did it have Homestead last year? Is it the same owner key? It's not a new exemption. If it had Homestead but it's a different owner key, no CPI. We'll figure it out. We're good. We've figured out harder. Let's keep going. Yes.
Okay, if somebody comes in, they want to take their homestead off. Are they applying to get homestead again for that same year? We take it off and then put it back on the same year to make their base value change?
Faye, she's talking to you. In your scenario where they can voluntarily get their homestead taken off, do they have to go a year without homestead, or can they take it off today and apply tomorrow?
No.
I think they have to have a year without it.
Yeah, they have to have a year without it, and in their eyes, you got to look at it like this. So let's say they do something, the value comes down that year, maybe the market has gone down, or maybe they filed an appeal, and that appeal has caused that value to drop. If I was a smart taxpayer, I'm paying tax on whatever that lower or lesser value is anyways. So yes, they would come out for a year, and then they could come in the following year and reapply. And there's nothing in the statute that prevents them from being able to do that.
Okay. All right, let's keep moving back to the screens. We're talking about base value. This is where the homestead section of the screen lives. If you've got local exemptions, you have already seen this float base 1 and float cur 1. That controls how your local exemption does its float freeze business. It's these float freeze business things that the law says the taxpayer gets whichever one's better. They don't get both. If you've got just a lump sum, it adds another $10,000. They can get both. But that's what those top two numbers mean. Then you scroll down, you see float base 2, float cur 2. Some counties have multiple bases, and that they need both of them. And then we added the SW base and the SW cur. That's where the FSW business is going to live. Now, even if your local exemption is better, and most of you that have had locals for a while, yours is going to be better than this one. You're still going to see the statewide base and statewide cur numbers there. We have to do that to calculate which one's better. And we have to have that to send it to the tax commissioner so their people can calculate exemptions. So that's what you see there. Now, the other things I want to point you out to is we've got the little hammer button with a screwdriver and a hammer. Its intention is if you don't want to reset all parcels, you want to reset one parcel. That's what that button is for. Hit the hammer. Now, it's not perfect, but there's a couple of steps required, but that's what it's for, and eventually, as soon as you smash it, it's going to update that base value for you, just for that one parcel. A place where we would need that would be for brand new applications. There was no number there last year because it didn't have homestead. They've applied this year. We need to calculate a base. Hit the hammer, okay? Now, all the different rows and columns I showed you with HS land, HS improvements, and base final, and all that jazz. If you smash that SW cur button, this to the left of the current value, that opens up a screen that lets you see all that jazz. So we talked about all means all. We talked about flags. We know about all that. We can skip that.
Tracy, will it automatically, if the homestead application date doesn't have one, will WECAP automatically put the 2025 date?
I don't know if we force in. No, we don't force in a date because we don't know the application date. They may have applied in January, and you've been at Six Flags for 6 months and haven't opened the mail.
But like we have existing homesteads from 2010 that don't have a date in there.
Yeah. And that date hasn't always existed, so the human's got to key in the application date. But we're not keying anything on an application date currently. It's just got homestead or it doesn't. We don't care what the date is. Just like you said, some don't even have a date.
But don't we need a date for statewide homestead?
No. If it's got homestead, it's going to do the math. If it doesn't have homestead, of course it doesn't. The date doesn't mean anything today. Now, I would put them in, and moving forward, it may help in this first year CPI business.
We do now, but I mean, we got old ones that don't.
Right. Yeah, don't worry about the old ones. It's okay. They're old. They've got it. They've had it. All right, so individual parcels, I already said all that. You can smash the button. I'm feeling kind of behind here. The statewide current button opens up that table and gives you some more controls. We talked about real growth. It's been in for a while that when you go in and make a value change of any kind, it captures that amount of change. Whether you're adding a porch, you're editing land, you're adding an accessory, you're changing an accessory, it captures that value change and it records it in a log. And that's what our real growth log is. I know the law says substantial or real changes. That's a matter of judgment that you're going to get to make. I'm not going to make it for you. But I will show you some tools that we've tried to help keep up with that. So on the preferences screen, you'll see down in that section, you've got where you can key in your CPI number. This year it's 1. And then the next 2 columns are statewide homestead MA, which stands for mobile assessor, and statewide homesteads WG, which stands for wind gap. And there are 2 choices there, R for real, I for inflationary. And what this allows you to do is, as the screen detects, well, you just added $3,000 of something, do you want it to be real growth or inflationary growth? You control that here at a high level. You can go edit each one individually if you need to. But that's what these do, is control what kind of growth actions you're doing, and to put it in the right category. Does that make sense? So the idea was, instead of having the human have to pick every single time, we took a high-level approach of this category. And so if you do all of your field work at a certain time of year, you could set this to real growth. So because all your in and outs are going to be, I'm adding porches or I'm moving walls or whatever I'm doing, let's throw it in the real growth column. And then when you finish your field work, maybe at that point, all you're doing is tweaking schedules, right? Neighborhood adjustments and front foot rates. And well, that's inflationary. So you can come back here and change that to an inflationary default. And then every time you come in and out of a screen, it throws it in the inflationary category. That's the idea. Now, I don't know if that's going to work for everybody, but you've got this to use as you see fit.
So anytime you enter any kind of new construction and you put an assessment reason that is a real, then it's going to add that to the base. Anything? No?
No.
Why not?
The assessment reason, her question was, well, she had a microphone, never mind. The assessment notice growth is independent of FSW growth, okay? I didn't want to get into this, but we are. It's okay.
Sorry.
No, it's a great question. What this does is has nothing to do with an assessment reason that you select, okay?
Oh, okay.
Anytime the value changes by virtue of a human going to that screen, you go in and you move a wall on a sketch, you change the plumbing fixtures, you change the roof type, and it changes the value. It needs to know, is that value change real or inflationary? And rather than asking you every time, it's going to read what is the default in preferences. Now, there's going to be some misses. I realize that. But for simplicity and taking care of 50,000 parcels instead of doing them one by one, we're just going to let you set the default for what the most edits are in that time period. Okay? And we got to track the value that's added so you can benefit the real growth stuff and not have to key it all in manually. That was the idea. Now, the growth you're talking about with assessment reasons, that's still there for digest submission and PT 32.1 millage rollbacks, none of that's changed.
Yeah.
This is all just for the statewide base calculations.
But I guess I still don't understand what we're, in a practical sense, when I'm sitting there and I'm adding something, is the system gonna add it to the base for me or not?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to
Oh,
capture, this is,
okay.
well, if your default's real, it's going to add it.
Okay, so any change we make,
Yes,
plumbing fixtures,
yes,
roof tile.
Yes, yes,
It goes to base?
Yes.
Easy peasy?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
As long as the default is R. Now, if you change your default to inflationary, your tweaky stuff's not going to do anything. Unless, I think Greg, you're going to have to help me remember. I know any sketch edit where you go into the sketch and the value changes when you come out, that's guaranteed to be real growth, no matter what this default is. There's another one too, Greg. Was it square footage or plumbing?
Plumbing.
If you change the plumbing, there's other things we can add to that we say, this is, if you edit this attribute, we're going to guarantee that's real growth. But we started simple with sketches and plumbing. I want us to think square footage is in there too, but that's related to the sketch, so that may be the same thing. So those are the only two exceptions to whatever this default is for the growth type. But yes, we're going to capture that for you without you having to do anything. And even if that person never ends up getting FSW because your local float's better, we're still recording that growth. So if it changes hands and the new person is, this FSW is better than the local, we've got all the stuff there already for you. Okay? Nathan?
On the other side, if, for example, going off your example, when you start tweaking your neighborhoods and all those types of things, factors and everything, if you still have this set to R, is it going to pick that up as real growth?
Yes.
Like if you,
In Nathan's example, you've done all your actual field work and all of that's keyed in and ready. And now you're doing what-if analysis for neighborhood adjustments. And you change that neighborhood factor, and then you not run reappraise, but you go visit that parcel, so the value's going to change. It's going to read this default, and if it's still R, it's going to put that neighborhood adjustment change as real growth.
now also is, for example, like you change your cost per square foot, things like that will also be picked up as real if it's set to real.
If the change happens by virtue of you opening that screen, that change category is going to be whatever this default is. Now, if the value changes as part of reappraise, that always goes to inflationary. Okay? Did that answer help you, Nathan? Kirk, do you have something?
Kind of along what Nathan's saying, just be careful when you're in there, because if you change the grade or change the condition, and you don't want that as actual growth, it's gonna add it as growth.
Yeah, Kirk's right. What Kirk's saying is if you visit a parcel and you're changing the observed condition, it's not a physical change. The property didn't physically change. It's just your judgment of that property has changed. It's just an inflationary adjustment, just like a neighborhood adjustment would be. If this is real, default in preferences, it's going to detect that change that you make from average condition to poor condition. It's going to call that real growth because that's the default. So what Kirk's saying in this wise advice, be mindful of that kind of stuff, and if it needs to be different than the default, you can go edit that and change it on that parcel, and I'm going to show you how to do that. All righty. Now, I might as well talk about this local override statewide homestead checkbox. When you visit a wind gap screen, it automatically calculates the current value for the statewide homestead curve. It says, what's the land value, what's the 5 acres, what's the house, what's the accessories, the flagged improvements, whatever. And it updates it. Soon, before you even see it, it's updated. Well, some counties wanted to lock it, for lack of a better word, or they had a different way they wanted to calculate the land instead of an average of 5, whatever. If you check that box for local override, it's not going to do the live calculation before you open the screen. Whatever it's in there is going to be there. Okay, does that make sense? That's not for everybody. I don't want everybody going home and say, well, there's a box, let me check it. Okay? Now, but if you understand its purpose, Bobby and I were talking the other day. He knows exactly what his statewide current stuff is. He's had it all calculated. He's just ready to lock it down. He doesn't want a clerk going in there, smashing a button somehow and accidentally changing it. He's checked the box so the screens don't automatically update that value, okay? It's not, again, it's not for everybody. It's just for advanced people that know what they want to do, okay? All righty. Just said that. Yep, just said that. All right, so we on the right-hand side of the real property general information screen, you know, there's 82 buttons. One of them is growth, where we can see both Lynn's assessment notice growth. If you run your growth calculations, that's the top half of the screen. That's always been there. It's still there. And you can do all the stuff you've always done. But the new stuff is the bottom half of the screen, where you see homestead real growth, and then the blue part, homestead growth, will be removed at year-end cleanup. And then you've got to, if there was any real growth on this parcel, real growth in the context of the statewide homestead, you'd see a number there. And if you want to see the details behind that number, you click the details button. And it's going to, did I hit 2 buttons? It felt like it. Okay. So I talked about that the log that we're going to see when we smash that button is captured for every parcel, whether they're receiving homestead or not, just in case we ever need it. That's what I said about an hour ago. So this is the information that's in that log file. You've got the digest year, the land fair market value, improvement, accessory. We've already seen this a little bit before, the real growth amount, CPI index, went too far. CPI dollars, statewide current amount, and the exemption calculation, the difference, just straight math, the parcel's fair market value, and the net taxable fair market value. The idea with this goes beyond just this year. This is going to become a log and a history file. So each year you'll have, well, you've got the 2025 information, the 2026 information, and right on down the line. We're just going to keep it for you. So that was where all this was created and where it came from. Now, if you mash that button, it's going to take you to this screen where you can see that table I just told you about. And so you can see where the 2 blue arrows are. That's the statewide base final, and then it's the statewide base curve. The 2 blue arrows correspond with the 2 red arrows that you see on the main screen. But what the other columns do is it just lets you see left to right doing the math to build up to, you've got the land contribution, the improvement contribution, accessories, and the original base. And then you've got the real growth column. You've got the CPI amounts, and then you have the base final. So it lets you see, so when somebody comes in, where did this number come from? You click the button, you say, well, land kicked in this amount. And we can do the math. We just saw how to do that. It's 4 acres, it's the total land value. It's 12 acres, you got to divide it, get 5 acres worth. All that kind of stuff we saw in the examples. But this lets you see, and you can print this out if they want to see it. I don't know that anybody's going to want to. But that shows you where the number came from. It's not, well, WinGap did it. Call Tracy. You can call me, but I'm going to say, no, Jennifer did it. We just helped her. But you don't have to give the answer of the computer did it. I don't know where it came from. So that's when you look at the log file, how that corresponds to the main screen where the red arrows are. You can see where those numbers come from. Now, I'll get to that business at the bottom where you see the update base button later, but we're not right now. So here you see the real growth column. That means at some point through edits, $14,400 have been added through some sort of screen activity. Okay? So if I wanted to see those details, I can click the growth details button in that bottom corner, right there. And when I do that, I get that bright blue. I guess that's blue. You ladies would probably call it something else because your color palette's a little more refined than mine. But you can see this was just one edit. And because it was one of those special categories that Greg and I were trying to remember what it was, this was a sketch that was edited. And you see in the comments, it says the sketch changed. And it tells you that whoever that user ID login was that did it. And it tells you the date they did it. And you see it was $14,000 worth. Now, you can, and down at the bottom, that's hard for you to read. Let me see if I can do something fancy. Ooh. So down at the bottom, you see the $14,400. You see it's categorized as real growth. If you wanted to change or edit that, you can type in, it's not 14.4, it should have just been 14. Type in your new number, update growth, it's changed and fixed and finished. If you need to change it to inflationary growth, change the R to an I, update growth. If you had an example where there was a house that was partially complete in 2024, it's now 100% complete, but you made that edit before we started detecting stuff, you may need to add a row. So you can go down to add growth and type in, well, that was $50,000 worth, type in your 50,000, categorize it as real growth because it was partially complete, now it's 100% complete, that should be added to the base, add growth, and it'll add a row to the table. If somebody's been in there and they just got all click happy and doing stupid stuff, and you want to clean it up, you can select a row and click delete growth, and it goes away. So we've given you a micro level control over all this stuff too. So we give you the benefit of running the menu, but you can go get your special cases right on the money, okay? Yes?
So if you go in there and you change the percentage complete to 100% and update all that, it's not going to update this screen?
If you do that today, yes, it will automatically detect it. But if you had done it in January, maybe you had a list as, all right, let me roll forward and let me go fix all these partially completes, and if you did it a long time ago before we were detecting stuff, you may need to add that manually. Okay, but if you do it today, it's going to do it automatically. Okay? Yes. Where am I looking? Oh, okay.
So I've got two questions. You said we may need to do that manually if we like changed percent completes earlier in the year. How will we know which parcels we need to go back and manually look at?
We can run wild search. You can probably find it. We can run a report of your partial completes and check them. I mean, there's probably not that many of them, just to put some eyes on it and see. You can either run a list of everything that was partially complete last year and go put eyes on each one of them, or if you're really skilled with SQL stuff, you can run a query that's changed percent complete and has a real growth item to help find them.
Okay, and my next question sort of follows this is, do you think there will eventually be something in data edits for us to look at?
To detect what?
This sort of thing right here.
We have already added some stuff to data edits, which we'll see in a minute, but that's not one of them, partial completes, but that's a good idea.
Maybe is there something in data edits that would just show us any parcels like this that have changes on them so that we can look and make sure somebody just hasn't gotten click happy in WinGap?
There's not currently. I think the difficult thing with that is every parcel that you visit potentially is going to have a growth event, homestead or not. So there's going to be a lot of noise there that's not really what you're looking for. We'd have to put our brains together to figure out to get what you really are looking for.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. I feel like there needs to be some sort of checks and balances for it because, I mean, it does happen that people open and things get touched unintentionally, especially when we're first learning how to use this.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. You're right.
Okay.
Yes.
Is there a plan to remove that ability from certain users?
What ability?
The ability to edit screens that we don't want certain users to be able to edit. In other words, when you're setting up a user in your password module, can you give them view-only rights to this type of information as well as the hammer button and
Yeah, we already have view rights, which you know. Now, I don't know, as new as this is, I don't know if they dropped the hammer button inside the view bundle or not, but it should be. What I would like to see is, I'm pretty sure, and Greg, maybe you can remember, if it's a view-only user, I think we could more or less disable calculations. So a inquiry terminal can't cause values to change effectively. So once they're view-only, number one, hide the button or disable it. Number two, there shouldn't be any calculations that create a growth event anyway to drop in there. So I think hopefully we can bottleneck it by just making sure Mr. Hammer is inside the view-only list as turn it off. That's a good question. I forgot about that. Ms. Lynn?
Okay, Tracy, can you give me some kind of time frame? Because I've just now gathered new construction.
Mm-hmm.
When did the system start recognizing it?
Oh, gosh.
Because
3 months ago?
you're kidding.
Mm-mm.
We do most of our field work back last fall. Are you telling me I got to re-enter all my new construction?
No.
Okay, you can do.
It may be
y'all
longer than that.
can
I don't
handle
remember when
this.
we started detecting it.
Okay.
No, I really don't remember when. Greg, do you remember? Longer? Shorter? Okay. So what you're saying is you did all of your new construction data entry
Last year.
in December or before January 1st?
Most of it, yes.
I mean, there's a way we can compare the now, what you're going to have to do, though, is you're going to have to make a high-level call to say every house, either everything that changed is real growth, which it may be. Everything that changed from X date to today is real growth. And we can throw that into the log table. And if that's too broad of a brush, but I mean, we can get it back for you. Yes, Kurt?
I mean, we went back and basically reviewed every permit just to make sure,
Yeah.
just to double check, make sure it was in there. I mean, it sounds daunting, but, you know, it only took about 3 or 4 days with everybody looking and making sure, and if it was something we needed to add, we added it. So it's, you know, it'll take a little time, but it's something you won't write this first year, because believe me, this first year you're setting the base moving forward. So you want 2024, that you want the base value to be right this year.
I agree.
So if you've got to take some time and go back and review stuff, do it.
But he's 100% correct. But we can also, Lynn, get with us. Yeah. And what we'll do before we just push it in, we'll generate a list, and so you can spot check some. So yeah, that's reasonable, and then we can throw it in. Yes.
We did something, I dealt with Kurt a good bit on this one, and we, instead of going one by one, we ran the list, we pumped all of our new construction in May 24. So we found that we missed all of that. So we ran the scripts, and then we adopted a policy that if you had new construction, your base was going to be the first year. We weren't going with any kind of previous year partial value or anything. And so we just slammed our 25 current values into that base. But we did, we were missing a bunch.
You can. I mean, there's no perfect way to do it. Even if you put eyes on every one of them, the chances of you hitting the wrong key we're not going to be perfect. Okay, so we're running out of time. At year-end cleanup, we are going to snapshot all of these key tables for you in addition to the log file that we already have. So those will be held and reserved, and you won't ever touch them. But if you ever need to see what it was the day you rolled forward, we'll have that snapshot data for you so we can do some detection or cleanup if necessary. We talked very quickly about how do we edit some of these values. I told you we had some screens for that. That's through the statewide CUR button. That brings you back to this screen we already talked about. Down at the bottom right, you'll see HS Land, HS Improvement, HS Accessory. If you need to do something directly to fix that base value, you can change the numbers there and say Update Base, and that'll do it for you, okay? We've already seen the Growth Details button. I'm going to skip that. You can correct growth. We already talked about that. All right, so there's that. All right, so I'm just going to, you can download the slides. We're almost out of time. I've gotten a lot of questions this week. What's next? What do we do now? So if you've done this, set up your tax types, set up your estimated rollback rates, done all those make sure you got FSW for state tax type. You've run a reset script at some point so that when you open up a parcel, there is a base, there is a current value. Spot check those things, make sure it's pulling in the right numbers that you feel is accurate. Run some preliminary, or some draft is probably a better word, draft assessment notices. Make sure that display does not set off any red flags. Run some consolidation sheets. You should know your data. If you don't have any local exemptions, your FSW count should be very similar to your state exemption count, because everybody gets it. If you run that and you've got 12,000 S1s, but you've only got 7 FSWs, something's wrong, okay? But if you've got a comparable number of FSWs, no red flags. Let's keep going, okay? If you don't have, if you've been aggressive or even engaged with this is probably a better word, and you go through all those steps and you don't see any red flags, don't assume there's a problem. I think we're super close. We know we have to fix something for historic properties receiving homestead. I've talked to several people about that yesterday. Bobby and I found something else that's going to be very easy to fix, but I don't know of any major things that are out there. So I think we're really close. I think we're in the short rows. So if you go through those things that you can review yourself and you don't see any big red flags, don't assume there is one. If you see a flag or you want to say, well, that just doesn't look right, get in touch with us and we'll track the rabbit, okay? So it is a lot, and it's a lot for me, and it's a lot for you, and it takes all of us working together to get it going. So don't just sit there and think, well, nobody's going to help me, or I don't know what to do. I mean, I don't know what to do all the time either. So we just talk it out, and sometimes looking at a list of 9,000 homesteads, it's just too much to consume. It just blows your mind away. Pick one. Go look at it in detail. Do some, well, here's my 5 acres of math that I hand calculate. That's what's on my HS land. Here's my main improvement. That matches. 2 accessories. That matches. I think that's a good base. Go check another one. And if you keep checking them and they're all right, then that's as good as you can do, right? So we do need to talk about, Lynn's got stuff. If you're like Lynn and you did all of your new construction before January, we need to pull some of that growth forward for you, because you should get advantage of that. So I hope that gives you some idea of where we go next. We'll have the historic stuff fixed this week. We'll have Bobby's other thing that he dropped on me yesterday fixed this week. So you'll be getting another update this week. And I think we're in good shape. So I know there's not much time for questions, but is there any questions that we haven't asked that you want to ask? Again, you can download these slides. I'm sorry we didn't get through everything.
Tracy, what about manufactured homes that are homestead?
What about them?
What about when you update the manufactured home schedule and depreciation kicks in?
Value change, it's going to look at the default for growth type, and it's going to throw it in the column.
Okay.
Manufactured homes, houses, any change to that parcel. Let's see. I don't know if I had something about assessment notice I wanted to say specifically. I don't think I did. Faye will personally look at your assessment notices. She will give you a certificate from Staples. No certificates from Staples. I made that part up. The whole file. No, not the whole file. I made that part up too.
What I would suggest you sending me is, especially if you have some districts that opted in or stayed in and some that opted out, please send me a copy of one that shows, because if you have that case, that taxing district or that person's going to receive that hybrid notice. But send me maybe one from each district, and then send me a copy of the personal as well to make sure that it is showing the correct information on there.
Your mic's not on. She's saying send her some sample
It's on.
assessment notices from each district and different types, and she will help you review if it should be a hybrid form, a rollback form, an estimated tax form. This slide, if you're going to download them at the bottom, explains what those 3 things are and what you'll see. Is that what you were saying? And you don't have to send them just to Faye. Send them to the support address. We'll all help. We'll all pitch in and look. I was going to see if there was something else. I know what I was going to do. I had a picture of this is an example of the consolidation sheet, so you can look. That you should see the FSWs there. You see here, I've only got 3,500, but their local exemption, there's 21,000. That may not be a problem. If their local is better than the FSW, you're going to see a drastically different number, okay? So that's why you have to understand your exemptions.
And if you haven't done a revow and increased anything.
Yeah, if your values haven't changed, there's nothing to add. But you also, this is just showing the county tax type. You need to check all of those tax types that have opted in. And if you're all opted out, go take a vacation. But if you got people that opted in, don't just look at county and say, well, county's good, and forget to check the others, okay? That's all I've got. Let me get you to your thingy. Oh, I went too far. Do they have little scanny things on their desk? Let me get it back up here. Is that... You're supposed to do something with this QR code. Hold your phone up and let it do something.